You're scrolling through your phone late at night when the video starts to play. A person collapses on a subway platform. Dozens of commuters step around them. Nobody stops. The comments underneath are furious. People call the city heartless. They call the crowd cowards. You watch it again, certain of one thing. You would have helped. You always do. But here's the part nobody wants to admit. Every person in that crowd probably believed the exact same thing about themselves. Each one assumed they were the kind of person who helps, and yet not one of them moved. This isn't a story about broken cities or cold hearts. It isn't really about cruelty at all. It's about something far stranger living inside the human brain, a switch that quietly turns off your instinct to act, not because you stop caring, but because other people happen to be standing next to you. Psychologists have a name for it. They call it the bystander effect. And once you understand how it actually works, you will never look at a crowd the same way again. The story begins in New York City in March of 1964. A young woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment building in Queens. Newspapers reported that 38 neighbors heard her cries and did nothing. Not one called the police while the attack was happening. The story spread fast. It became a symbol of urban indifference, proof that cities were turning people into strangers who no longer cared about each other. Two young psychologists read that story and felt something other than outrage. They felt curiosity. What if the size of the crowd itself was the problem? What if more witnesses didn't mean more help, but less? Their names were John Darley and Bib Latané, and the experiment they built still shapes psychology classrooms today. They invited college students into a lab, one at a time, and told them they would be having a discussion over an intercom with other students sitting in separate rooms. There were no other students, just a recording. Partway through, the recorded voice began to choke and gasp, describing what sounded like a seizure, then went silent. Some participants believed they were the only other person who could hear it. Others believed there were several other listeners scattered through the building, all hearing the exact same thing. Here is the twist. When a participant believed they were alone with the victim, almost all of them rushed to get help, usually within a minute. When they believed 4 other people could also hear it, the numbers collapsed. Fewer than a third helped quickly. Some never told anyone at all, the whole session running out before they acted. Nothing about the emergency had changed. The voice choking on the other end was identical in every version. The only thing that changed was the number of people who could possibly respond to it. Darley and Latané called this diffusion of responsibility. It sounds technical, but the idea is simple. When you're the only witness, the responsibility to act sits entirely on you. There's nowhere for it to go. But when 10 people are watching the same emergency unfold, that responsibility quietly splits 10 ways inside each person's mind. You start to think, surely someone else is already calling for help. Surely someone closer, someone more qualified, someone braver is handling this right now. Everyone thinks it, nobody acts. The responsibility evaporates, spreads so thin across the crowd that no single person ever feels it land on them. But that's only half the puzzle. Why does a crowd's silence feel like permission to stay silent yourself? To answer that, the same researchers ran a second experiment, and this one is even stranger. They sat people alone in a waiting room and slowly pumped smoke through a vent in the wall. Alone, 3 out of 4 people got up and reported it within 2 minutes, smoke visibly pouring into the room around them. Then they tried it again with groups of 3 strangers sitting together, filling out a meaningless questionnaire. The smoke filled the room until visibility dropped, until people were coughing, rubbing their eyes, waving a hand in front of their face to clear the air. And still, in most groups, nobody reported it. Many just kept filling out the questionnaire, eyes watering, waiting for someone else to break first. Here's what was actually happening inside that room. Each person glanced sideways at the strangers around them, looking for a clue about how worried they should be. And what did they see? Other people sitting still, trying just as hard not to look alarmed, doing the exact same nervous glancing back. Everyone was quietly performing calm for everyone else. Nobody wanted to be the one who panicked over nothing in front of strangers. So the room filled with smoke while three people negotiated, through silence alone, an unspoken agreement that this must somehow be fine. Psychologists call this social proof. You are a creature built to read other people's reactions as evidence about reality itself. If the room were genuinely dangerous, why does everyone else look unbothered? That single question can keep you frozen in your chair. Your eyes are stinging. Your lungs are working harder than they should. And still, the calm faces around you quietly win the argument against your own senses. Think about how unsettling that really is. The presence of other people isn't neutral. It can actively talk you out of trusting what your own body is telling you. Now here's where the story gets more complicated and more honest. Decades later, researchers named Rachel Manning, Mark Levine, and Alan Collins went back and reread the original newspaper coverage of Kitty Genovese's murder. What they found surprised a lot of people. The famous number, 38 witnesses who did nothing at all, was almost certainly an exaggeration produced by early, sloppy reporting. Some neighbors did call the police. One woman ran outside and held Kitty as she died. Does that mean the bystander effect itself is a myth? No. But it does mean the most famous origin story of a scientific idea turned out to be partly wrong, even while the underlying science was right all along. Sometimes a flawed legend is what gets a true discovery noticed by the world in the first place. And the science kept getting tested. In 2011, a psychologist named Peter Fisher led a team that combined the results of over 50 years of bystander studies into one massive analysis, more than 100 experiments in total. The pattern held remarkably well across decades and cultures. But buried inside the data was something nobody expected. When the emergency was genuinely, obviously life-threatening, the bystander effect grew weak, sometimes disappearing entirely. A real fire, a real physical assault, a real medical collapse with visible blood. In those moments, the danger was so unmistakable that ambiguity vanished, and with it, the hesitation. People stopped reading each other's faces for clues and simply acted. The effect was strongest, instead, in situations that were ambiguous, mildly risky, or socially awkward to misjudge. Is that person actually hurt or just drunk? Is that argument escalating or already over? Is this message a real cry for help or just someone venting? Exactly the kind of uncertainty where you need other people's reactions to tell you how to feel, which is exactly where diffusion of responsibility thrives. That single finding flips the whole story. The bystander effect was never really about people being heartless in the face of obvious tragedy. It was about responsibility becoming invisible, specifically when the situation wasn't crystal clear, and a crowd gave everyone permission to assume someone else would resolve the uncertainty for them. So why does any of this matter to you, scrolling through your phone on an ordinary night, far from any subway platform or smoke-filled room? Because the bystander effect never stayed in 1964. It just changed its setting, and it found a setting almost perfectly designed for it. Picture a group chat where someone sends a message at 2 a.m. that doesn't quite sound okay. 12 people see it. The little red receipts pile up, one by one. And somehow, because 12 people saw it, every single one of them assumes someone else is already replying, already calling, already handling it. The responsibility splits 12 ways and lands nowhere at all. Picture a comment section under a video of someone in real distress. Hundreds of strangers typing concern, hearts and crying emojis stacking by the thousand, and almost none of them doing the one useful thing, which is actually contacting someone who can physically reach that person. The crowd has gotten bigger than anything Darley or Latine could have imagined. The mechanism inside each individual mind hasn't changed at all. If anything, Fisher's research suggests the internet makes it worse, not better. Online, almost everything is ambiguous by design. You can't see a face clearly. You can't hear a real voice. You're left guessing whether a post is a joke, a cry for help, or nothing at all, which is precisely the foggy, uncertain territory where diffusion of responsibility grows strongest. So, what actually breaks the spell, online or off? Researchers found one thing that works almost every time: a single direct instruction aimed at one specific person. Not "somebody help." Instead, you, in the red jacket, call an ambulance now. The moment responsibility has a name attached to it, diffusion has nowhere left to hide. The freeze breaks almost instantly, because the fog of who's supposed to act has just been cleared by one sentence. Hospitals learn this lesson the hard way. Patient safety researchers studying medical errors found that nurses and doctors standing in a crowded room were sometimes slower to flag a warning sign than a single nurse working alone, for the exact same reason a smoke-filled waiting room stayed calm. Once hospitals trained staff to name a specific person and a specific task out loud during emergencies, response times improved. The crowd hadn't grown kinder or more careful. It had simply stopped being a crowd of equally responsible strangers and become a room where one person clearly owned the next move. That fact changes the entire meaning of the story. The bystander effect was never proof that people stopped caring about each other. It was proof of something almost the opposite: that humans are so finely tuned to read each other's behavior for cues that a room full of caring people can talk each other into stillness without saying a single word out loud. So the next time you watch a crowd do nothing, you'll know the truer story behind it. It isn't that 38 people, or 12 people in a group chat, or a comment section full of strangers stopped feeling anything. It's that the responsibility scattered so evenly across all of them that it never landed hard enough on any single person to move. You would have helped. So would they. The only thing missing was someone willing to point, name a face, and break the silence first.